My sister-in-law kept wiping her phone clean every night. Yesterday, I finally figured out why. I had just hit rock bottom when my sister-in-law moved in with us after her nasty divorce. My husband Michael insisted we help family in need, so we welcomed Emma into our guest bedroom. The first few days were awkward but manageable as we adjusted to sharing our space. Little did I know this act of kindness would lead to the betrayal that would shatter my marriage and change my life forever. The signs were subtle at first. Emma's bedroom door would close quickly whenever I walked past, and hushed phone conversations would abruptly end when I entered the room. I noticed her phone screen always wiped clean of notifications each morning. No message previews, no app alerts, nothing. Our once peaceful home became a battlefield of unspoken tension. Michael started working late and seemed distant, always checking his phone with a strange smile I hadn't seen before. The wedding photo that had proudly sat on our mantle for 7 years somehow ended up face down more than once. I'd fix it, only to find it toppled again days later. When I mentioned it to Michael, he shrugged it off as the cat's doing, even though our cat rarely jumped on the mantle. The betrayal was hiding in plain sight, but I couldn't yet connect the dots. The first concrete evidence came when I borrowed Emma's laptop to print some documents for work. She had left it open, and when I moved the mouse, her email popped up. I wasn't trying to snoop, but a subject line caught my eye. "Missing you already." The sender's name was hidden, but the preview showed the words, "Last night was amazing." My stomach dropped. Emma was seeing someone, which wasn't wrong, she was divorced after all, but something about the secrecy felt off. That evening, I prepared dinner as usual. The family gathered around our kitchen table like we'd done hundreds of times before. Emma seemed especially cheerful, laughing at all of Michael's jokes while I silently observed their interaction. The way they exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking set off alarm bells in my head. My husband of 7 years, the man who had promised to love and cherish me at our wedding, was acting like a teenager with a crush. "I have to go to Chicago next week for that conference," Michael announced, taking a sip of his wine. "Probably 3 days." Emma's eyes brightened. "Oh, I've always wanted to see Chicago." "You should come," Michael replied too quickly. "The company paid for a suite anyway. Plenty of room." I nearly dropped my fork. "I thought we discussed me going with you to make a mini vacation out of it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the betrayal I suspected. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. "We're cutting costs this quarter. The company won't cover your ticket anymore." "But they'll cover Emma's?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Emma stared at her plate while Michael cleared his throat. "I just meant she could come if she wanted. No big deal." That night, I couldn't sleep. The trust that once formed the foundation of our marriage felt like it was crumbling beneath me. I lay awake listening to the floorboards creak as someone moved through our house well past midnight. Getting up to investigate, I saw Emma's door slightly ajar, the room empty. A faint light shone from downstairs. Following the light, I found Emma in our kitchen, not just making a midnight snack as I expected, but sitting at the counter, furiously typing on her phone. She didn't notice me watching from the shadows as she smiled at whatever message she'd received. When her phone pinged again, I distinctly heard my husband's text tone, the custom sound I'd set on his phone years ago as a joke. My heart sank to my stomach. I retreated silently to my bedroom, my mind racing. The next morning, I woke early and checked Michael's phone while he showered, something I'd never done before in our marriage. There were no messages between him and Emma, not a single one. That's when I realized she must be deleting their conversations every night, and he was likely doing the same. The betrayal stung like salt in an open wound. For days, I watched them more carefully, noting how they always seemed to be in the same room, how their hands would sometimes brush accidentally, how they'd both check their phones at the same time and smile. The evidence was circumstantial but mounting. I needed proof before confronting them, so I installed a family tracking app on our phones under the guise of safety concerns after a break-in down the street. Michael didn't question it, perhaps because he had nothing to hide outside the house. But it would show me if they ever left together when I wasn't around. My opportunity came sooner than expected. One Tuesday, Michael called to say he was working late again. The tracking app showed him leaving his office, but not heading home. Instead, he drove to a small Italian restaurant across town, a place he and I had discovered on our third date. The same restaurant where he had proposed to me years later. My hands shook as I watched his location remain there for over 2 hours. I checked Emma's location. She was at the same restaurant. The betrayal became impossible to ignore. I drove to the restaurant, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. Parking across the street, I watched through the window as Michael reached across the table and took Emma's hand. The intimate gesture between my husband and my sister-in-law, my own family, made me physically ill. I wanted to storm in, to cause a scene, to let everyone know what they were doing. But something stopped me. A cold clarity washed over me. If I confronted them now, they'd have excuses ready. They'd minimize it, gaslight me, make me feel crazy for suspecting what was clearly happening. No, I needed more than just seeing them at dinner together. I needed undeniable proof of their betrayal. So I drove home and waited, formulating a plan. The trust between us was already broken, but I needed everyone else to see it too, including Michael's brother, Emma's ex-husband, who had always been kind to me. This betrayal wasn't just of our marriage vows, but of an entire family's trust. When they returned home, separately of course, with Michael arriving first acting exhausted from work, I pretended nothing was wrong. I kissed my husband goodnight as if my world wasn't collapsing. And then I set my alarm for 3 a.m., determined to catch Emma in the act of erasing her digital footprints. 2. Desenvolvimento do conflito. Party 02. The alarm's vibration woke me at exactly 3 a.m. I slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb Michael, who was snoring softly beside me. The hallway was dark as I crept toward Emma's room, guided only by the faint blue light seeping from beneath her door. I paused, listening. The rhythmic tapping of fingers on a screen confirmed my suspicions. She was awake, deleting evidence. Instead of confronting her immediately, I returned to my bedroom and grabbed my phone. The family tracking app showed something interesting. Michael and Emma had visited 3 more locations together that day before the restaurant, including a jewelry store in the mall. A jewelry store. The betrayal cut deeper with each discovery. Over breakfast the next morning, Emma announced she had a job interview. "It's for an administrative position at Westfield Corporation," she said, buttering her toast with an air of nonchalance. Michael nearly choked on his coffee. "Westfield? That's where you worked before your current job?" I finished for him, watching their reactions carefully. What a coincidence. "Michael mentioned they were hiring," Emma replied smoothly. "He even gave me a reference." "How thoughtful," I said, forcing a smile while rage boiled inside me. "You never mentioned that to me, honey." Michael shrugged. "Must have slipped my mind. Just trying to help family." Family. The word tasted bitter now. Trust had always been the cornerstone of our marriage, but each passing day revealed more cracks in its foundation. That afternoon, I called Janet, my closest friend since college. "I need to talk to you about something," I said, my voice breaking despite my efforts to stay composed. "Can we meet?" An hour later, we sat in a quiet corner of a cafe, away from curious ears. Janet listened without interruption as I laid out the evidence. The secret dinners, the deleted messages, the shared glances, the jewelry store visit. "Are you absolutely sure?" she asked when I finished. "This is your husband and his brother's ex-wife we're talking about. That's beyond just an affair. It's a double betrayal of family trust." "I know what I'm seeing," I insisted, "but I need irrefutable proof before I confront them, something they can't explain away." Janet leaned forward. "My cousin went through something similar. She installed a hidden camera in their living room, caught her husband and best friend red-handed." The suggestion made me uncomfortable. Installing cameras felt invasive, crossing a line I wasn't sure I could come back from. But hadn't they already crossed the ultimate line? Hadn't they shattered the trust that our marriage was built upon? "I'll think about it," I said finally. When I returned home, Michael and Emma were sitting on the couch watching a movie, a respectable distance between them. Too respectable, almost staged. Michael barely acknowledged my arrival, his eyes fixed on the screen. "How was Janet?" he asked, not looking away from the TV. "Fine," I replied, hanging up my jacket. "She's having trouble with her marriage." This finally caught his attention. "Oh? What happened?" "Her husband's cheating on her, with family, no less." The color drained from Michael's face. Beside him, Emma suddenly became very interested in her phone. The silence that followed spoke volumes. "That's terrible," Michael finally managed. "What's she going to do?" I looked him directly in the eyes. "She's gathering evidence. Then she's going to destroy him." That night, I couldn't sleep again. Around midnight, I heard Michael's phone buzz. He read the message, then carefully got out of bed, assuming I was asleep. Through barely open eyes, I watched him type a response, then delete both messages. The betrayal was becoming a choreographed dance between them, and I was the unwilling audience. I decided against cameras. Instead, I'd use their own carelessness against them. The next morning, I purposely left my phone at home when I went grocery shopping. As expected, the family tracking app showed Michael and Emma leaving the house together 20 minutes after I left. This time, they went to a hotel less than 5 miles away. My hands trembled as I drove home, the grocery bags forgotten in the trunk. I needed time to think, to plan my next move. The pain of betrayal had transformed into something colder, more calculated. I would not be made a fool of in my own home. When they returned, they came together this time, laughing about some supposed errand they'd run for Emma's job interview preparation. The lies flowed so easily from their lips, it made me wonder how long they'd been practicing. "You two seem to be getting along well," I observed casually. "Emma's practically my sister," Michael replied, putting an arm around her shoulders in what was meant to look like a brotherly gesture. "Family sticks together, right?" Family. There was that word again, twisted to justify their betrayal. That evening, Michael received a call from his brother, Emma's ex-husband. I watched his face carefully as he spoke, noting how he stepped outside to the conversation in private. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," he said curtly. "James is coming to town next week. Wants to see Emma about finalizing some paperwork for their divorce." Emma's face paled. "He's coming here? To the house?" "I told him he could stay with us," Michael said, not meeting my eyes. "That's okay, right? He is my brother." The web of deception was growing more tangled. Now they would have to maintain their charade in front of James as well. I wondered if he suspected anything, if he had his own reasons for wanting to see them face to face. "Of course it's okay," I said, surprising both of them with my enthusiasm. "It'll be nice to have the family together." The look they exchanged was priceless, pure panic barely concealed behind forced smiles. The trust they thought they had in their secret was beginning to crumble. That night, I made a decision. I would not confront them yet, not without James present. Whatever was happening between Michael and Emma, whether it was an emotional affair or something more physical, James deserved to know. He was family too, after all, and he had already been betrayed once by Emma in their marriage. The next few days passed in a blur of pretense. Michael and Emma were more careful, barely speaking to each other when I was around. But the family tracking app told a different story. Short meetings while I was at work, carefully timed to avoid suspicion. The jewelry store appeared again on their shared locations. 2 days before James was due to arrive, I found something that chilled me to the bone. While doing laundry, I discovered a hotel keycard in Michael's jacket pocket. The same hotel their locations had shown them visiting. This wasn't just secret conversations anymore. The physical evidence of their betrayal was literally in my hands. I took a photo of the keycard and put it back in his pocket. Evidence gathered, another piece of the puzzle in place. That night at dinner, Michael announced he would be working late again the following evening. "Big project due," he explained, not meeting my eyes. "Might be there until midnight." "That's too bad," I said. "I was hoping we could all have a nice dinner before James arrives. Emma, will you be home tomorrow night?" Emma fidgeted with her napkin. "Actually, I have a second interview for that job. Might run late." "What a coincidence," I said, raising my glass in a mock toast. "Looks like I'll have the house to myself." Their relief was palpable, and in that moment I knew exactly what I needed to do. The trust in our marriage was beyond repair, but the truth needed to come out. For my sake, for James's sake, and perhaps even for theirs. I texted James that night, asking if he could arrive a day early. I didn't explain why, only that it was important. His response was immediate. "I'll be there by 6 p.m. tomorrow." Perfect. That would give me just enough time to prepare for Michael and Emma's return from their work commitments, which, according to the hotel keycard, would likely be another rendezvous at the same hotel. The family reunion was about to happen sooner than any of them expected. The betrayal of trust within a marriage is devastating enough. But when that betrayal involves family, when the very people who should protect you instead conspire to hurt you, it creates a special kind of pain that cuts to the core of who you are. I was done being the trusting wife who looked the other way. Tomorrow would change everything. The next day crawled by with excruciating slowness. I went to work as usual, pretending nothing was wrong, while inside I was a hurricane of emotions. The betrayal I'd discovered had transformed me, hardening something inside that I never knew could be so solid. Each time my phone buzzed with a notification from the tracking app showing Michael and Emma together again, that hardness grew. At 5:30 p.m., I left work early and drove home to prepare for James's arrival. The house felt eerily quiet, almost as if it too was holding its breath for what was about to unfold. I checked the tracking app one more time. Michael and Emma were at the hotel again, exactly where I expected them to be. The doorbell rang at 6:07 p.m. I opened the door to find James standing there, looking tired from his flight but concerned by my cryptic message. James had always been the more serious of the two brothers, taller than Michael, with the same dark eyes but a quieter demeanor. His marriage to Emma had ended badly, though he never shared the details with us. Now I wondered if her patterns of betrayal had started long before she moved into our home. "Victoria," he said, giving me a quick hug. "What's going on? Your message sounded urgent." I led him to the living room, my heart pounding. "You might want to sit down for this," I said, gesturing to the couch. "It's about Michael and Emma." His expression darkened immediately. "What about them?" I took a deep breath and began laying out the evidence. The secret meetings, the deleted messages, the hotel visits, the key card. With each revelation, James's face grew stonier, his hands clenched into fists on his knees. "Show me," he said when I finished. I pulled out my phone and opened the tracking app, showing him their current location at the hotel. "They've been there for 2 hours now. They told me they'd be working late." James stood up abruptly, pacing the room. "I should have warned you," he said, running a hand through his hair. "This is exactly what happened with us. The lies, the secret meetings, the betrayal of trust. Except it wasn't my brother she was seeing then. It was my best friend." His words hit me like a physical blow. Emma had done this before. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was a pattern of behavior. And Michael had fallen right into it. "What do you want to do?" James asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. The question hung in the air between us. What did I want? Revenge? Confrontation? Divorce? All of the above? "I want them to know that we know," I said finally. "I want them to come home and find us both here waiting." James nodded, a grim smile forming on his lips. "Then we wait." We sat in the living room, the minutes ticking by with agonizing slowness. I made coffee that neither of us drank. James shared more details about his marriage to Emma, how he'd discovered her affair, how she'd gaslighted him for months before he found irrefutable evidence. "The worst part wasn't even the physical betrayal," he said quietly. "It was the lies. The way she made me question my own sanity. The destruction of trust." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The foundation of my marriage had been built on trust, and now it lay in ruins. At 8:42 p.m., the tracking app showed movement. They were leaving the hotel, presumably heading home. My stomach knotted with anticipation. "They'll arrive separately," I predicted. "Emma first, then Michael about 15 minutes later. They always do." James and I positioned ourselves in the living room, lights on, clearly visible from the front door. We didn't speak, the weight of the coming confrontation hanging heavy between us. At 9:06 p.m., a car pulled into the driveway. Emma's silhouette appeared through the frosted glass of our front door, keys jingling as she unlocked it. When she stepped inside and saw us both sitting there, the shock on her face was undeniable. "James!" she gasped, recovering quickly. "You're early! We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "Clearly," he replied coldly. Emma's eyes darted between us, calculating. I could almost see her mind working, crafting lies, creating diversions. "I had that job interview," she said, setting down her purse. "It ran late." "At the Westfield Suites Hotel?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Her face paled. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't bother lying, Emma," James said, standing up. "Victoria knows everything, so do I." Emma's composure cracked slightly, but she rallied. "Knows what? That I had an interview? That's hardly a crime." Before either of us could respond, the front door opened again. Michael walked in, stopping short when he saw the scene before him. His wife, his brother, and his lover all in one room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "James," he said, his voice strained, "you're here early." "Surprise," James replied flatly. Michael's eyes found mine, questioning, afraid. "What's going on?" I stood up slowly, facing my husband. The man I had loved and trusted for 7 years. The man who had vowed before family and friends to be faithful to me. The man who had betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. "Why don't you tell us where you were tonight, Michael?" I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. He hesitated just for a second, but it was enough. "Working late. Big project like I told you." I nodded as if considering this. "And Emma was at a job interview." "That's right," Emma chimed in quickly. "At Westfield Corporation? ID?" "Yes," she agreed, too eager. I pulled out my phone and held it up, showing them both the tracking app with their locations clearly marked at the hotel. "Interesting place for a job interview. Same place you've been meeting for weeks now. Same hotel where Michael conveniently had this in his pocket." I held up the keycard I'd found. The color drained from both their faces. The moment stretched between us, taut with unspoken accusations and crumbling lies. Michael broke first. "Victoria, it's not what you think." "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't insult me by lying more. I know about the jewelry store visits too, the secret dinners, the deleted messages, all of it." Emma looked at James, her expression hardening. "You've turned her against us. This is your doing." James laughed without humor. "My doing? I just got here. But I've seen this show before, Emma. You're following the same script you used with me and Paul." Michael's head snapped toward Emma. "Paul? Your ex-boss? You told me that was just a rumor." The first crack in their united front appeared. Emma faltered, thrown off by this unexpected direction. "It doesn't matter," she said dismissively. "What matters is Victoria's been spying on us, tracking our movements, invading our privacy." "Our privacy?" I repeated incredulously. "You're in my house, sleeping with my husband, and you're concerned about privacy?" The brazenness of her betrayal and her attempt to deflect blame left me breathless. The trust I'd extended to her as family had been weaponized against me in the most intimate way possible. Michael stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. "Victoria, please, we need to talk about this privately." "There's nothing private about betrayal," I said. "Not when it happens in my own home." Emma moved closer to Michael, a subtle gesture of alliance that didn't go unnoticed by either James or me. "You're overreacting," she said, making assumptions based on circumstantial evidence. "Like the hotel keycard?" I asked. "Like the matching locations? Like the jewelry store visits? Which part is circumstantial, Emma?" Michael looked between Emma and me, conflict evident on his face. For a moment, just a moment, I thought he might tell the truth. But then Emma's hand found his arm, a small gesture of reassurance, and I watched my marriage die right before my eyes. "It's not what it looks like," Michael insisted weakly. James snorted in disbelief. "It never is it? God, you two deserve each other." The four of us stood in my living room, the truth hovering between us like a physical presence. My marriage, built on what I thought was unshakable trust, had been hollowed out from within by the very people who should have protected it. Family had become the instrument of betrayal, trust the weapon used against me. In that moment, faced with their denial despite overwhelming evidence, something shifted inside me. The pain was still there, raw and throbbing, but alongside it grew a new emotion: resolve. I would not let their betrayal define me or break me. I would not let them rewrite our history or gaslight me about what I knew to be true. The confrontation had only just begun, but already I could feel myself changing, hardening, preparing for whatever came next. The trust they had broken could never be repaired, but perhaps from its ruins, I could build something stronger, a new life where I trusted myself first and foremost. Emma's eyes narrowed as she watched me, perhaps sensing this transformation. "What exactly do you want, Victoria?" she asked, her voice laced with challenge. What did I want? Justice? Truth? A reckoning? "I want you both to look me in the eyes," I said slowly, "and tell me exactly when my marriage ended, when trust became something you were willing to sacrifice for whatever this is between you." The question hung in the air, unanswered, as we faced each other across the battlefield of my shattered marriage. The silence that followed my question was deafening. Michael stared at the floor, unable to meet my gaze, while Emma's eyes darted between us, calculating her next move. The betrayal hung in the air like a toxic cloud. "This is ridiculous," Emma finally said, breaking the silence. "You're making something out of nothing because you're insecure about your marriage." "Insecure?" I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "I trusted both of you. I welcomed you into my home, Emma, and this is how you repay that trust?" Michael finally looked up, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "It just happened, Victoria. We didn't plan it." "Just happened?" James interjected, his voice cutting through the tension. "Like it just happened with my best friend Emma? Like it just happened with your colleague before that?" Emma's head snapped toward James. "Shut up," she hissed. "No, I don't think I will." James D., stepping closer to her. "Victoria deserves to know exactly who she's been housing. Tell her about the pattern, Emma. Tell her how you get bored and move on to the next exciting conquest. Tell her how you love the thrill of taking something that belongs to someone else." Michael looked at Emma, confusion clouding his features. What is he talking about? I watched realization dawn on my husband's face as Emma remained silent. The trust between them was fracturing too, built as it was on deception and betrayal. "Emma?" Michael pressed, moving slightly away from her. "He's trying to turn you against me," Emma said quickly. "Can't you see that? James has always been jealous of any happiness I find." James laughed bitterly. "Happiness? Is that what you call sleeping with your ex-husband's brother? Creating chaos in a stable marriage? You don't want happiness, Emma. You want drama." The family dynamic was unraveling before my eyes. The betrayal that had united Michael and Emma was now creating fissures between them as more truths emerged. "How long?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "How long has this been going on?" Michael and Emma exchanged glances, a silent communication that felt like another stab to my heart. 2 months, Michael finally admitted. "Since about a month after she moved in." The timeline hit me like a physical blow. 2 months. While I was cooking their meals, washing their clothes, offering support and kindness, they had been betraying my trust behind my back. "And the jewelry store visits?" I asked, dreading the answer but needing to know. Michael's eyes widened in surprise. "How did you—" "The tracking app, remember?" I cut him off. "The same one that showed you at the hotel tonight. What were you buying, Michael?" Emma stepped forward, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Show her, Michael. Show her what you bought me." The casual cruelty of her suggestion made my stomach turn. The betrayal was complete. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Michael hesitated, then slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart dropped as he opened it, revealing a pair of diamond earrings that must have cost thousands. "Our wedding anniversary is next month," I said quietly, the realization washing over me. "Were you going to give those to her while pretending to celebrate 7 years of marriage with me?" Michael at least had the decency to look ashamed. "I can explain—" "No," I interrupted, surprising myself with my calm. "No more explanations. No more lies. I want both of you out of my house. Tonight." Emma laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "You can't kick us out. This house belongs to Michael, too." "Actually," I said, pulling a folder from the side table, "it doesn't. Remember when we refinanced last year, Michael? when you were too busy to attend the signing and gave me power of attorney? I opened the folder, revealing the deed with only my name on it. The house is mine. Solely mine. Michael's face paled as he stared at the document. That's not possible. You wouldn't— I did, I confirmed. You signed the papers without reading them. Too much trust, I suppose. Ironic, isn't it? The betrayal he had visited upon me had unwittingly given me the upper hand. The trust he had placed in me, while simultaneously betraying my trust in him, had become my greatest asset. You can't do this, Emma said, her confidence faltering for the first time. We have nowhere to go. You have a hotel room, I reminded her coldly. The one you've been visiting regularly. Take your things and get out. James moved to stand beside me, a physical show of support. I think you both should leave, he said firmly. Now. Michael looked between us, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. Victoria, please. We can talk about this. Work through it. There's nothing to work through, I replied. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. The trust between us was irreparably broken. The marriage I thought we had, built on mutual respect, honesty, and fidelity, had been a mirage. In its place stood this ugly reality of betrayal and deceit. I'll give you 30 minutes to pack essentials, I said, looking at my watch. The rest we can arrange to have moved later. Emma grabbed Michael's arm. You don't have to listen to her. This is your house too, your marriage. Are you really going to let her dictate? The marriage ended the moment you started sleeping with my sister-in-law, I cut in, and the house is legally mine. You can challenge it in court if you want, but for tonight, you're leaving. Michael's shoulders slumped in defeat. The fight seemed to drain out of him as the consequences of his actions became clear. Fine, he said quietly. We'll go. Emma stared at him in disbelief. Just like that? You're giving up? What choice do I have? Michael shot back, frustration finally breaking through. She has the deed. She has evidence of us. What exactly do you expect me to do right now? The first real crack appeared in their united front. Under pressure, facing consequences, the betrayal that had bound them together was beginning to strain. I'll help you pack, James offered to Michael, his voice cold. Make sure you don't take anything that isn't yours. As they headed upstairs, Emma remained in the living room, her eyes fixed on me with undisguised hatred. You won't get away with this, she said quietly. You think you've won, but this isn't over. It is for me, I replied. My marriage is over. My trust in both of you is shattered. What exactly is left for me to lose? Her smile sent chills down my spine. You'd be surprised, she said, before turning to follow the men upstairs. Alone in the living room, I let out a shaky breath. The confrontation had gone both better and worse than I'd imagined. The truth was out, the consequences in motion, but the pain of betrayal still cut deep. 7 years of marriage, of building a life together, destroyed by the two people I should have been able to trust most. 30 minutes later, Michael and Emma stood by the front door with hastily packed bags. The family picture that had once seemed so perfect was now distorted beyond recognition. Where will you go? James asked his brother, no warmth in his voice. The hotel, I guess, Michael replied, not meeting anyone's eyes. Just for tonight, then we'll figure something out. Emma's expression remained defiant, but I could see uncertainty in her eyes. The future she had planned, whatever it might have been, was unraveling rapidly. I'll be in touch about divorce proceedings, I told Michael, my voice surprisingly steady. I suggest you find a lawyer. As they walked out the door, Michael paused and looked back at me. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I thought I had married. Regretful, ashamed. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I replied simply. And no amount of sorry can rebuild the trust you've broken. The door closed behind them, and suddenly the house felt emptier than it ever had. James put a gentle hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, he said. Standing up for yourself, not letting them gaslight you. I nodded, tears finally threatening to spill. The betrayal had cut deep, but I had survived the first confrontation. The marriage was over, But perhaps this was just the beginning of something else. A life rebuilt on my terms with trust placed more carefully. "What happens now?" James asked gently. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Now," I said, "we prepare for whatever comes next. Because Emma was right about one thing. This isn't over yet." The family bonds had been broken, the trust shattered, but I refused to be the victim in their story of betrayal. Whatever came next, I would face it on my feet, not on my knees. The next morning dawned with a strange sense of emptiness. I awoke in our bed, my bed now, alone, but unburdened by the weight of lies. James had taken the guest room, insisting on staying a few days to help me navigate the aftermath. The betrayal still stung, raw and throbbing, but alongside it grew something unexpected. Relief. The truth, however painful, was preferable to living in ignorance while my husband and sister-in-law made a mockery of my trust. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "We need to talk. Alone, please." James entered the kitchen, eyeing my expression. "Let me guess. Michael wants to meet?" I nodded, showing him the message. "Classic," he said, pouring himself coffee. "First comes the betrayal, then the damage control. Emma did the same thing with me. Wanted to meet alone, away from any witnesses who might contradict her version of events. His insight into Emma's patterns was proving invaluable. The marriage I thought I knew had been replaced by this new reality, where my husband and his brother's ex-wife had conspired behind both our backs, destroying the family bonds and trust we had built. "What should I do?" I asked. James considered for a moment. "Meet him, but on your terms. Public place. And have a lawyer by then." I spent the morning calling divorce attorneys, finally securing an emergency consultation for that afternoon. The family photos that lined our hallway seemed to mock me now, smiling faces at weddings, holidays, anniversaries, all underscored by a betrayal that had been brewing right under my nose. At noon, I texted Michael back, "Cafe on 4th, 2 p.m., 1 hour only." His response was immediate. "Thank you, I'll be there." The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Diane Mercer, listened carefully as I laid out the situation, the affair with Emma, the confrontation, the house deed in my name. "You're in a stronger position than most," she said when I finished. "Having the house solely in your name is significant. Do you have joint accounts?" "Some," I admitted, "our main checking and savings. But I have my own accounts too, from before we were married." "Transfer your portion immediately," she advised. "Once divorce proceedings begin, those accounts could be frozen." The betrayal had forced me to think in terms I never imagined would apply to my marriage: assets, evidence, leverage. The trust that had allowed us to build a life together was now the very thing I needed to protect myself against. At 2 p.m. sharp, I entered the cafe, spotting Michael already seated in a corner booth. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, the confident man I had married reduced to a shadow by his own choices. "Victoria," he said, standing as I approached. "Thank you for coming." I sat across from him, maintaining a physical and emotional distance. "You have 1 hour," I reminded him. He nodded, hands wrapped around his coffee mug as if seeking warmth. "I've made a terrible mistake," he began. "Which one?" I asked coolly. "Sleeping with your brother's ex-wife? Lying to me for months or getting caught?" He flinched at my directness. "All of it. I never meant for any of this to happen." "Things like this don't just happen, Michael. You made choices. Every secret meeting, every lie, every betrayal of trust. Those were all choices." He stared into his coffee. "Emma was vulnerable after the divorce. I was just trying to help her at first, be a supportive brother-in-law. Then things changed. The family connection made the betrayal even more painful. This wasn't just an affair with a stranger. It was with someone who was family, someone who had been welcomed into our home out of kindness." "When did it start?" "Exactly." Michael hesitated. "About 3 weeks after she moved in. We were up late one night talking. You were asleep. She was crying about the divorce, about feeling alone. One thing led to another." Each word felt like another crack in the foundation of what I thought our marriage had been. "And the jewelry? The earrings?" He had the decency to look ashamed. "Her birthday is next week. It was stupid, I know. Stupid doesn't begin to cover it, Michael. I leaned forward. Do you love her? The question hung between us, the cafe noise fading to a distant hum as I waited for his answer. I don't know, he admitted finally. I thought I did, but now... Everything's such a mess. James says she has a pattern, I said. That she did the same thing in their marriage, had affairs, lied about them. Does that concern you at all? Michael's expression shifted, uncertainty clouding his features. She said that was different, that James was controlling, that he drove her to it. I laughed without humor. And you believed her? The woman who helped you lie to your wife for months? Whose judgment did you trust more? Hers or your brother's? The question seemed to hit home. For the first time, I saw real doubt in Michael's eyes. I've spoken to a lawyer, I said, changing tactics. She's preparing divorce papers. Unless you plan to contest the house ownership, this could be relatively straightforward. I don't want a divorce, he said quickly. Victoria, please. We can work through this. Go to counseling. Start over. The desperation in his voice might once have moved me, but the betrayal had hardened something inside. The trust that had been the bedrock of our marriage was shattered beyond repair. There is no starting over, Michael. Not after this level of betrayal. Not when you brought it into our home. She's gone, he said suddenly. Emma, she left this morning. This caught me by surprise. Left? Where? I don't know. We had a fight after we checked into the hotel. About James, about what he said regarding her past. Things got heated. She stormed out, said she needed space, took her car, and left. An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. Emma's parting words echoed in my mind. You'd be surprised what you have left to lose. Michael, I said slowly, what exactly did Emma take with her? He frowned, confused by the question. Her clothes, I guess. Why? Did she have access to our personal documents? Financial information? Passwords? Realization dawned on his face. She might have. She used my laptop sometimes. And I think she knew some of our passwords. We weren't exactly being careful about... I stood abruptly, cutting him off. I have to go. Now. Victoria, wait. But I was already moving, fear propelling me toward the door. The betrayal might have extended beyond our marriage into something potentially more damaging. The trust Emma had abused might have given her access to our entire lives. I called James as I drove home, explaining the situation. She's gone, left Michael this morning after a fight, but she might have our financial information, personal data, everything. I'll meet you at the house, he said grimly. And Victoria, hurry. When I arrived, James was already on our front porch, his expression grave. The door was unlocked. I never leave it unlocked. Wait here, James said, pushing me gently behind him as he cautiously entered the house. We moved through the rooms together, the familiar space now feeling threatening, violated. Nothing seemed disturbed in the living room or kitchen, but when we reached my home office, my heart sank. The desk drawers hung open, papers scattered across the floor. My laptop was gone. Check your accounts, James urged. Now. With trembling fingers, I pulled out my phone and logged into my banking app. The balance on our joint checking account read $12.47. Our savings account, 0.0. The betrayal had evolved from emotional to financial in the span of hours. She took everything, I whispered, showing James the screen. Nearly $70,000, all of it, gone. James's face hardened. Check your CR cards. Each card showed recent purchases, cash advances taken to their limits, charges at electronic stores, airline tickets. The systematic destruction of our finances was breathtaking in its efficiency. Call the police, James said. Then your bank. This is theft. Plain and simple. As I made the calls, the full impact of Emma's betrayal began to sink in. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. She had taken the trust granted to her as family and weaponized it, not just against my heart, but against my entire life. The police arrived within 20 minutes, taking statements and photographs of the ransacked office. Officer Reynolds, a woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened carefully as I explained the situation. The affair, the confrontation, Emma's disappearance, and now the financial devastation. Classic revenge scenario, she noted, writing in her notepad. Unfortunately, with joint accounts, it gets complicated. She may claim your husband gave her permission to access the funds. He didn't, I insisted. And even if he had, that wouldn't cover the CR card fraud or breaking into my home. She nodded. Those are clearer violations. We'll file reports on all of it and flag her ID with airport security. The airline tickets might tell us where she's headed. After the police left, I sat on the couch, the emotional and financial betrayal leaving me numb. James brought me tea I couldn't drink, his presence the only comforting thing in a world suddenly turned upside down. I should call Michael, I said finally. He needs to know what she's done. James nodded grimly. I'll do it. You've been through enough today. I listened as James explained the situation to his brother, hearing Michael's voice rise through the phone even from across the room. The betrayal had come full circle. Emma had used both of us, taking what she wanted before disappearing. When James hung up, his expression was grim. He's coming over, says he needs to see the damage for himself. And Victoria? He sounds different. Michael arrived 30 minutes later, the confident man I'd married now completely gone. In his place stood someone shattered, his expression vacillating between fury and despair. I'm so sorry, he said immediately, standing awkwardly in the entryway of what had once been our home. I had no idea she would do something like this. Didn't you? James asked coldly. After what she did to me? After what she did to Victoria? You really thought she had limits? Michael had no answer for that. The trust he had placed in Emma, even as they betrayed others together, had been his undoing as well. The three of us sat in uncomfortable silence, united only by our shared betrayal at Emma's hands. The family we had once been was unrecognizable now, bonds of trust shredded beyond repair. The airline ticket, I said suddenly, remembering. Did the police say where it was to? Cancun, Michael replied. One way, first class, using my CR card. The betrayal was so complete it was almost impressive. Emma had orchestrated her exit with the precision of someone who had done this before. Because she had. My phone rang. Diane Mercer, my lawyer. Victoria, I've spoken with the police and your banks. The good news is we can prove fraud on the CR cards. The bad news is the joint accounts. That money might be gone for good. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. What about the house? Can she make any claim on it? No, that's secure at least. The deed is ironclad. One small mercy in a sea of betrayal. After I hung up, Michael looked at me, really looked at me for the first time since arriving. What can I do? He asked simply. The question caught me off guard. After months of lies, of betrayal, of destroying the trust we had built over 7 years of marriage, he was finally asking the right question. You can tell the truth, I said. To the police, to the CR card companies, to anyone who asks. You can confirm that you never gave her permission to take our money or use our cards. You can sign the divorce papers without dragging it out. You can, for once, do the right thing. He nodded slowly. I will. All of it. I promise. I wanted to believe him. After everything, some small part of me still wanted to trust that the man I had married existed somewhere beneath the lies. But trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt, if it can be rebuilt at all. The next few days passed in a blur of police reports, bank meetings, and lawyer consultations. The financial damage was extensive, but not insurmountable. The emotional damage, that was harder to quantify. 4 days after Emma's disappearance, the police called. We found her, Officer Reynolds said. Tried to board a flight to Cancun, but was flagged at security. She's in custody now. Relief flooded through me. Will I get my money back? Some of it, the officer admitted. She'd already spent quite a bit. But the fraud charges will stick, and we found evidence on her phone that she'd been planning this for weeks. Text messages to someone named Marcus detailing exactly how she was going to clean you out. Marcus, her ex-boss, the man James had mentioned. The pattern repeated itself with metronomic precision. Michael insisted on going with me to the station, though we traveled in separate cars. The marriage was still over, the betrayal too deep, the trust too broken to repair. But in this, at least, we were aligned. Seeing Emma in custody, stripped of her carefully constructed facade, was jarring. Her designer clothes replaced by generic detention wear, her practiced smile nowhere to be seen. When she spotted us entering the room, her eyes narrowed with undisguised hatred. "You did this," she hissed at me. "You couldn't just let us be happy." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. Happy? Building a relationship on lies and betrayal? Stealing from the people who trusted you? That's your definition of happiness? Michael stepped forward, placing himself between us. "Enough, Emma. It's over. All of it." She turned her venom toward him. "You're choosing her? After everything we shared?" "I'm choosing the truth," he said quietly. "Something I should have done months ago." In that moment, watching my husband finally stand up for what was right, I felt a glimmer of, not forgiveness, exactly. The betrayal was too fresh, too deep for that, but perhaps understanding. Michael had been weak, selfish, foolish, but he wasn't cruel by nature. Emma was something else entirely. "Sign this," I said, sliding divorce papers across the table toward him. "Then we can both start moving forward." Michael looked at the papers, then at me, regret etched into every line of his face. Without a word, he took the pen I offered and signed his name. The betrayal that had defined the past months of my life was not erased by that signature, but it was contained, acknowledged, given boundaries. The marriage was officially over, the trust broken beyond repair, but I was still standing. As we left the station, Michael paused. "I know it doesn't fix anything, but I am truly sorry, Victoria, for all of it." I studied his face, the familiar features that had once represented safety and partnership, now recontextualized by betrayal and its aftermath. "I believe you," I said finally. "But trust isn't just about believing someone's words. It's about knowing their character. And I don't know you anymore, Michael. Maybe I never did." He nodded, accepting this hard truth. "What will you do now?" I thought about the house. My house, waiting for me. About the life I would build there, alone but unburdened by lies. About the trust I would place more carefully in the future. "I'm going to start over," I said simply. "And this time, I'll make sure the foundation is solid." 1 year later, I stood in my kitchen, truly my kitchen now, preparing dinner for James and his new girlfriend, Melissa. The house had transformed alongside me. I'd repainted every room, replaced furniture that held too many memories, and created a space that reflected who I was now, not who I'd been as Michael's wife. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, remarkably smooth once Michael stopped fighting it. The betrayal that had ended our marriage became a catalyst for change in both our lives. He'd moved across the country for a fresh start, sending occasional emails that I sometimes answered, sometimes didn't. Emma had pled guilty to CR card fraud and theft, receiving a 3-year sentence with possibility of parole after 18 months. The financial damage she'd caused had been partially repaired. I'd recovered about half of the stolen money, and insurance had covered some of the rest. The trust I'd once placed so freely in family had become something I guarded more carefully, but I hadn't let betrayal make me bitter. The doorbell rang and I wiped my hands on a dish towel before answering. James stood on the porch with Melissa, a bouquet of flowers in hand. "For the hostess," he said, handing them to me with a smile. The friendship that had emerged from the ruins of our respective marriages was unexpected but valuable. James understood what I'd been through in a way few others could, and watching him rebuild his life alongside mine had been healing for us both. Over dinner, conversation flowed easily. Melissa, a pediatric nurse with kind eyes and a quick wit, fit seamlessly into our small circle. The three of us talked about everything and nothing: work projects, weekend plans, a new restaurant downtown, normal life, untainted by lies or betrayal. "I heard from Michael yesterday," James said as we moved to the living room with glasses of wine. "He's seeing someone new, says he's been in therapy for almost a year now." I nodded, surprised by my lack of emotional response to this news. "Good for him. I hope he's learned from what happened." I think he has, James replied. Some people need to lose everything before they understand what matters. The wisdom in his words resonated with me. The betrayal I'd experienced had stripped away everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my family, even myself. But from that painful revelation had come clarity and strength I might never have found otherwise. Speaking of news, Melissa said, changing the subject with gentle awareness of the emotional territory. I heard from my cousin in Cancun last week. You'll never guess who she saw there. James and I exchanged glances, both immediately thinking the same thing. Emma? I asked. Melissa shook her head. No, thank goodness. It was her ex-husband, Marcus. Apparently he's living there now, running some kind of investment scheme targeting tourists. She said he tried to hit on her until she mentioned she was dating James. Your name seems to have made quite an impression. James snorted. I'm sure it did. Marcus and Emma were two of a kind, always looking for the next person to manipulate, the next trust to exploit. The mention of Emma still brought a slight chill, but it no longer paralyzed me. The damage she'd done to my marriage, my finances, my sense of security had been significant but not fatal. I'd rebuilt, stronger than before. Later, after James and Melissa had left, I sat on my back porch watching the stars emerge in the evening sky. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Michael. Got a new phone. Just wanted to say I hope you're doing well. I think about what happened every day. I'm sorry for betraying your trust. You deserved better. I read the message twice, considering whether to respond. The marriage was over, the betrayal acknowledged and processed, but there was no reason for animosity. We had both moved on. Thank you, I typed back. I'm doing well. I hope you are too. Simple, honest, without opening the door to more. 6 months after Emma's betrayal had blown up my life, I'd started dating again, cautiously, with the hard-earned wisdom of someone who had seen how quickly trust could be weaponized. I'd met Kevin through a photography class I'd taken to fill my suddenly empty evenings. He was divorced too, with his own story of betrayal that had left him wary but not closed off. Our relationship developed slowly, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. We talked openly about our pasts, our fears, our boundaries. The trust that grew between us was different from what I'd had with Michael, more conscious, less assumed. We earned each other's confidence step by step rather than expecting it as a given. Last week, Kevin had asked me to move in with him. I'd said I needed time to think, not because I didn't care for him, but because I understood now the weight of truly sharing your life with someone. The decision to trust at that level again wasn't one I would make lightly. My phone buzzed again, Kevin this time. Thinking of you. No pressure on the moving in thing. Take all the time you need. I smiled, warmth spreading through me. This was what healthy love looked like. Patient, respectful, honest. The betrayal I'd experienced had taught me what to avoid, but it had also clarified what to seek. The house around me was quiet, peaceful. Mine in every sense. Legally, emotionally, practically. I'd transformed it from a site of betrayal to a haven of self-discovery. The wedding photos were long gone, replaced by images of my solo travels, family without Michael, friends who had stood by me through the worst. Tomorrow, I had a lunch date with Janet, who had been my rock through the divorce. Next weekend, a day trip with my sister to a vineyard upstate. The week after, a work conference where I'd be presenting a project I'd spearheaded. My life was full, meaningful, and authentically mine. The betrayal that had once defined my days had shrunk to its proper proportion, a painful chapter, but not the whole story. The trust I now placed in others was more discerning, but no less genuine. I had learned that family could hurt you the deepest, but also that new connections could heal wounds you thought would never close. As I headed inside for the night, locking my door and setting my alarm, habits formed in the aftermath of Emma's intrusion, I felt gratitude rather than fear. Every security measure represented a lesson learned, a boundary established, a statement of self-worth. My marriage had ended in betrayal, but my story hadn't. I had survived the collapse of trust and emerged not just intact, but transformed. The woman who had once defined herself as Michael's wife now stood firmly as herself, wiser, stronger, and open to whatever came next, with eyes wide open. The path forward wasn't without its challenges. Trust, once broken, rebuilds itself differently, more deliberately, with greater awareness of its value and fragility. But in that conscious reconstruction lay a kind of freedom. I no longer took trust for granted, either given or received. Each connection in my life now stood on a foundation of choice rather than obligation or assumption. Family remained important to me, but I had learned that true family was defined by actions, not titles. James had become more brother to me than brother-in-law, our shared experience of betrayal forging a bond stronger than the legal ties that had originally connected us. My own sister, parents, and close friends had rallied around me when I needed them most, proving that some relationships could withstand even the harshest tests. As for Michael and Emma, I had reached a point where I could think of them without pain. The betrayal they had visited upon me no longer defined my days or disturbed my nights. I had released them, not for their benefit, but for my own. Carrying anger would only have given them power over my life, and they had already taken enough. In the end, the greatest lesson from my marriage's collapse was not about the fallibility of others, but about my own resilience. I had trusted and been betrayed. I had lost what I thought was the foundation of my life. And yet, I had rebuilt. Not the same structure, but something new. Something that was wholly mine, designed with the wisdom that only comes from weathering storms you once thought would destroy you. The wedding ring that had once symbolized unbreakable trust now sat in a small box at the back of my drawer, not displayed prominently, but not discarded either. It was part of my history, a reminder of both what I had lost and what I had gained. The marriage was over, but its lessons would remain with me always.